And looks like we're live now. Welcome everybody, and we're just talking tonight with three prior Hokie Stormchasers, and we're going to talk about some chasing tonight. We're looking at the first Hokie Stormchase in 2012 tonight, the first trip, and we have three distinguished guests who are all experienced chasers here. And so I'm going to start on my left with the icons and ask a few questions so we can identify ourselves. So on my left I have Andrew Smith. So Andrew, if you would tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, when you graduated from Tech, and what you're doing right now.
Well, yeah, my name's Andrew Smith. I'm a 2009 graduate of Tech with a degree in civil engineering. Kind of the oddity here in that I'm in the engineering route as opposed to meteorology, but when I was, during my time there, I took some meteorology classes and got hooked into the program, or the very early stages of the program, through an online class. And it was actually a mistake how I wound up on my first storm chase. It was an errant email that was supposed to go to another individual and wound up coming to me. And so a year after that, I wound up going on my first storm chase and couldn't stop after that. So it was a happy mistake.
So you were, or Dave was stuck with you then, right?
Exactly, yeah. He couldn't get rid of me.
Okay, great. Well, welcome to the broadcast. And in the center of the center icon, I have Mr. Dan Goff. So I'll just run the same questions at you, Dan. Where are you from originally? When did you graduate from Tech, and what are you doing now?
Sure. I am originally from Richmond, Virginia. I've lived all over the state, so I pretty much claim all of Virginia as my home at this point. I'm a 2013 graduate of Virginia Tech. I got degrees in both geography and meteorology. And I am currently in grad school at the University of South Carolina working on a master's in geography. My thesis is yet to be proposed, so it's not quite there, but I'm going to be looking at the effects of winter storms in the southeast and the east coast.
Cool.
Nice.
Yeah. All right, and then we just heard the voice of the last but not least Hokie Stormchaser. Catherine, would you care to introduce yourself, and the same questions go to you?
Sure. So hi everyone, I'm Catherine Prosiv, and I graduated from Virginia Tech in 2012 with my bachelor's and 2013 with my master's, also in geography like Dan, with mostly meteorology as well, so kind of a dual major. And now I am a weather producer for the Weather Channel, so I'm part of the morning team. I'm a night owl for the most part, so you will see me. I have no shame. I'm drinking coffee right now, and I will be throughout this Google Hangout. I was asleep 10 minutes ago. So I'm just really happy to be here. I went on 5 Hokie Storm Chase trips, several with these guys right here. They're my crew, and I'm looking forward to tonight.
Cool, yeah. I should mention also that I am drinking out of my Weather Geeks jar here, but I'm sticking with water tonight, not coffee.
Okay, but cheers to that.
Because if I was drinking coffee right now, this wouldn't last but about 15 minutes. All righty then. That's right. Well, in talking about this particular storm chase, I actually did a write-up on this, and I think I posted it on the Hokie Stormchase Facebook page. There's some notes on there, on the notes pages, and I posted this, and I titled it "A Dearth of Convection." This was one of those storm chasing trips that we really had to work to find something to chase, and so I thought we'd just kind of cover things, go through it day by day, and talk about the chasing or the non-chasing, depending on what happened that particular day. So I got up on my other computer here, the screen, talking about. Of course, we leave Blacksburg usually in the morning to head out west, and typically we leave right after graduation, which is either the second or the third weekend in May, depending on how things fall. This particular one, we had planned to leave that Sunday after graduation, but the pattern was just not there. Remember, we deliberated and we talked about it, and we finally pushed it off when we left Tuesday morning, 8 hours. One of the other, this particular chases, this was the first one that I was on, and it may be, go back to some of the longer-term chasers there. This was, I think, the first chase we actually took 3 vehicles on. Is that correct?
No, 2009 had 3 vehicles. They had a visiting professor from Canada. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. We had a little 4-seater, which I think we had him. What was that, Dan?
It was Bob Oliver. He was our
Bob Oliver.
professor.
Yeah, he was driving what we called the probe car. It was just a little 4-seater sedan. So that one was a real learning experience because it was very difficult with 3 vehicles and that many people managing pit stops and everything. So.
Okay. Well, we certainly found out on this trip because I wound up being the one driving the little 4-seater.
Yeah, this wasn't our first chase with 3 cars, but I think this was our first trip with 3 mezzonettes.
Yes,
yes?
Good segue, Dan, because that was exactly what I was going to bring up. The prior chase in 2011, we had 2 vans with 1 prototype mezzonette, which we took out with us, that we never turned on, by the way. But
we forgot the cable.
Yeah. Well, we had 3 vehicles, each with mezzonettes on them, 2 minivans with 6 people each, and in the car I was driving, I think it was a Chevy Cobalt, I think, one of those 4-bangers.
That sounds right.
Dan was in the vehicle with me, and neither Dan nor I are particularly small people, so it was an interesting challenge. But Andrew's right. It is difficult dealing with 3 vehicles in the logistics, and pulling off the road, gassing up. Of course, the interesting part with this one was the 2 minivans did great on gas. I was the one with the little 10-gallon tank that kept running out of gas. We had to stop every so often.
Yep, I remember that because you'd get over the CB and be like, "Hey, can we look for the next gas stop?" And all of us would be like, "Oh." We knew it was you guys in that car.
Yeah, we typically on a storm chase, just for those who haven't been on the Hokie Stormchase, we don't let the tanks by choice get below a half tank. I think Andrew's got a picture up there. It looks like a.
That looks a lot like a picture I just queued up too.
Yeah. So this particular car, didn't get excellent gas mileage, especially with the mezzonette strapped on top. So it seemed like it was probably more often or less often than I'm thinking, but about every 90 minutes, it seemed like we had to stop and fill our tank up. So kind of slowed things down a little bit.
Yeah, I will point out that of the 2 of us, only one got to ride in the back seat.
That's true.
Yeah. So at least one of you had a little more comfort than I did for some of those days.
That's true, and we did have some young ladies with us that were a bit smaller than us that could fit into those seats just a little better than we did.
And I believe you guys nicknamed them the Giggle Twins.
The Giggle Smart Twins, yes.
Smart Twins.
Bonnie and Amanda.
Bonnie and Amanda, yeah, great
Yes.
girls, but yes. Pretty giggly.
Yeah, Bonnie is actually, I think last I heard she was in Austin, Texas now.
Awesome.
She graduated last December, and Amanda's graduating next month.
Yep.
Very soon, yes. So we're sending them in many directions, and it looks like we've lost Andrew here. I don't know if I need to re-invite him or not. We'll see if he can join us back. But at any rate, we did leave on Tuesday rather than Sunday in hopes of pushing things off and not just being out there and spending gas and money. Oh, here comes Andrew back.
He's back.
Yeah. So what happened, Andrew? Did you have to reboot?
I tried pulling up a picture and they didn't like that, so I'm going to go picture free for this.
All right, we'll rely on our other screens to do that for us.
Thank you.
So I have on my notes here, and if anybody else who has particulars, they can look at it too. We left that Tuesday, and we didn't really push that hard that day. We drove from Blacksburg to Danville, Illinois, which is only 530 miles, which is a fairly easy first day normally for Hokie Stormchasers.
Normally we do 700,
That's a family
800.
community there.
Right. So that was Tuesday, and then we were heading up to the northern route across, or I say northern route. Generally, most northern route we take out west, and that's going up I-80 and going across Interstate 80 across that way. So we wound up the second night, Wednesday night, in York, Nebraska. And if I try my...
I was going to say, I've got a picture too.
Yeah, go ahead, throw it up there.
All right, are you doing the water tower?
No.
Oh.
So I was trying to share my favorite picture we've taken out there of the 3 mezzonettes at the rest area in Indiana at dusk the first day.
There's
That
York.
is,
There you go.
Good old York, Nebraska.
The Rainbow Water Tower. All right, go ahead, Chris.
Well, I was just trying to pull one up. I'm not sure it's going to come up. We'll see. We'll see what happens here. Well, can get it to go up there. Here we go. See if this will work.
There we go.
There we go.
oh yeah.
Yeah, that's at a lunch stop that day, or actually it was a dinner stop that evening. That you can see our little four-banger parked between the two minivans there, and doing what we typically do is either eat out of the cooler and the back of the vans, or we had other people that kind of went off to fast food joints and everything. We typically pull in for that.
I can't even remember what that one was, because I very seldom ate out of the cooler, but that stop was like I think it was maybe Subway or something usual.
Yeah, yeah, I think it may have been Subway. That sounds vaguely familiar.
Could have been. Could have been.
It's either Subway or Arby's or
One of those, yeah. I typically ate out of the coolers for lunch. Dinner was when I usually tried to do something different, but I know there was a couple trips I remember where I think Subway kept me alive for the whole trip. So, well, that was Wednesday night. We overnighted in York, Nebraska, and of course that night we did our nightly meeting, to plan, hey, where we're going to go the next day, and we got up Thursday morning and took another look at the models like we typically do, and we decided to head to North Platte, Nebraska. Yep. And we got there, and as typically happens, forecast changed by the time we got there. The setup had changed, and so we at North Platte we actually dove straight south down into Kansas at that point.
And before we did that, we stopped at Taco Bell, and here we all are with Henry.
the Taco Bell outside the gas station with the best looking cashiers.
With the best looking cashiers, yes, that's the one.
Self-proclaimed, as I remember it.
Yes.
Yeah, we went in and we had a look, and what did we all decide? That they could have put the world's nicest cashiers. That was a fair assessment.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you one of the things you find out on these trips is you run across some very interesting people.
Yes.
In some very interesting places, and especially once we get off of the interstates. Typically, going out and coming back, we hit interstates to make time, but once we get out in the chase area, we stay off the interstates and we go through all the little towns, and it's just kind of neat to see some of the places and get a feel for what life is really like out there on the plains.
Mm-hmm. We made another stop that day, too, at Andrew's favorite truck stop.
Oh, Bosselman's, yes.
Ah, that's right.
That's right.
Bosselman's and Grand Island.
Dinosaurs and tanks and teepees right out front.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And they used to have the Twister pinball game in the arcade there, but I think sadly it has been removed.
Oh.
Yeah, that's what happens when we get old, you know. So anyway, what I have on my notes is very kind of I don't have route numbers and everything, but I think if I remember right, let me pull the screen up here. I think we dove down in the vicinity of Oberlin, Kansas, which is in northwestern Kansas, and there were some cells going up. I don't think correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there was anything severe. I don't think there was any severe watches out, or I think it was just kind of like run-of-the-mill convection. Anybody remember?
That sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah,
It was just a pop-up shower day.
Yeah, it wasn't a severe day by any means, but it was a nice storm view day.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Lots of nice rain shafts in the distance.
Yeah, and I remember we stopped somewhere near Oberlin, maybe just south of there, and watched for a while, and watched visually, and then watched radar, and we finally picked out what looked like the best cell on radar, and I think we headed a little further south to catch up with it. We were headed south. That may have been that route directly south out of Oberlin, And I remember some of you guys may have better pictures because I was driving at the time. Well, we noticed a gust front and a gust NATO crossing the highway probably a couple miles ahead of us.
Yes.
Yes.
I think this was
you got a picture up there.
Yep. I think this was the first of many gust NATOs that we saw. Didn't we call this the gust NATO trip or something like that?
We saw a bunch of them.
Yeah, there were some this day, and there were some the other day we had convection.
All right, there we have our Hokie van in front of the building storm there.
Blue van with blue storm.
There you go.
Yeah, let me see if I can. I do have one picture here. Maybe I can pull up. Let me see. I'm trying to do too many things at one time.
I have a bunch of pictures from out there, but I don't want to risk crashing my Hangout again trying to switch it over to it.
Well, I understand that. Here we go. This was a picture I took
nice.
shortly after pulling off the road, and you can see the gust. I mean, the dust there, just on the left side, heading from right to left as you look at it.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I got a similar shot. Let's see if this will work.
Okay.
There it is. Try that. Nope. Wrong picture.
That was the one I was trying to show earlier.
Yeah, that was a nice one too.
Yeah.
Here we go. Yeah, this is right around the same time that, I think yours.
Oh yeah.
That yours great.
Okay. Yeah, and along
the
that.
other thing.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, the other thing that we got along with this was that nice RFD. I think actually before we saw the gust front come across the road, we stopped and got blasted by the RFD.
That's right.
Yeah.
Do I have a...
I'm trying to see if I've got a picture of that too. We had stopped and kind of watched the rain come towards us, and you could see we saw the cows coming across the field, running away from it, running towards us.
That was the cows one because I've done that a couple of times. And, yeah.
I actually have a video of that. I'm not going to try to show it because I probably would blow things up right here. But I watched it kind of in fast motion today, and it was funny how fast the cows actually were moving, just in real time, trying to get away from it. But yeah, that was. I don't think that was an RFD as much as it was that entire storm collapsed, and what we experienced as I remember, it was probably like 15 or 20 minutes. Was a very steady wind gusting. I don't remember. It was well over 30 or 40 miles an hour, but I don't remember how high it actually got.
Did I have my anemometer out during that? I can't remember.
I believe you did. I don't remember what you got on it, but I think you had it out.
For some reason, the 40 to 50 range sounds sort of familiar, maybe closer to 40.
If I remember, several of us were leaning into the wind, weren't we? We were having fun, like leaning into it. We weren't falling over.
I lost my hat at some point.
Did you get it back?
Yes.
Did you chase it down the road? Okay.
I think it blew into a puddle. It didn't go very far.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Hey, Dan. I think that RFD you're thinking about was on the 2011 trip. Because I remember that happening too in 2011. We got blasted by RFD, and you lost your hat on that one.
Maybe it was a 2011 trip.
Was that the storm?
I thought it was this day with the cow. That would have been. Yeah, that would have been Powder Donut Day.
Powder Donut Day.
Yeah,
oh, that
was 2011.
That was 2011.
Yeah. So this one was actually a core collapse of a non-severe storm, but it was a significant collapse because it happened right, probably 3 or 4 miles from us, and we were recipients of not only the wind, but I remember picking dust up just about every crevice in my eyes and mouth and nose for a while.
Yeah, Andrew, what were we joking about? The Kansas dust, it was dinner. We were joking around that was dinner, something like that.
Oh, yeah, we got enough that we weren't.
I kept my sunglasses on during the whole thing and just got completely obliterated.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, between that and the 2008 Stormchase, and we were driving through some of the back roads of Kansas. We were off-roading to try to keep up with some of those storms, and it was just so dusty before the storms hit. We had the windows open that, the inside of the van just had a wall of dust all over it.
Yeah.
That's always fun when you get home and have to clean that out before you turn the vans back in.
Yeah, that was when we rented the vans from the rental car companies, so that was a real tough one to explain to them.
Yeah. Well, I remember too that the gust NATOs we saw that day were on the leading edge of that outflow boundary, and then we just, I think what we did, if I have in my notes here, we just jumped back on, or went further south and jumped on I-80 and stayed in the favorite place of most of Hokie Stormchasers, and that would be Bikini, Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
My personal favorite.
Your personal favorite? Okay. We'll let you get by with that one. Because I always go for Pratt, but you know.
And because the Kansas dust was not actually enough for dinner, this is when we had the awesome group night at Pizza Hut.
Oh yes, yes.
That was a fun night. Was that I think that was our first kind of group dinner of that trip.
That's the first time we actually rolled in early.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah, that was kind of fun.
That was really fun. It was good times. And the hotel was like right across the street.
Right. So everything was walkable.
Yep.
Cool. Well, the next day, I've got a couple things in my notes I want to bring up and have you guys talk about. The next day, what we actually did was we punted because there wasn't anything to go after close by that day. So that's when we went to Monument Rocks. Okay.
Yes.
But before we did that, or maybe I should say the reason we did that is we had one of those famous or maybe infamous chaser trade-off decisions to make. We had, our original thought was that on, let's see, I've got this written down here. On Saturday, this was Friday, we were at Monument Rocks, there was a setup that looked like it was going to develop in central and northern Kansas on Saturday, but we originally thought on Friday we were going to be chasing in South Dakota. So literally on Thursday, when we were making our plans Thursday morning to head out, head to North Platte and everything, and go chase in that area, we had to decide to punt one way or the other. You can't do Kansas and Kansas one day and South Dakota the next, or vice versa. Anybody have any thoughts about that or remember that?
I seem to recall, we were debating between the two, and then for some reason I remember that there was some kind of potential play that day in eastern Colorado, maybe on the dry line or something. I mean, it was very meager moisture that day, but for whatever reason, whatever we looked at indicated that there might have been a play in eastern Colorado, and the next day we obviously determined was more favorable than trying to get up to South Dakota that day, and we decided to play the dry line action in eastern South Dakota, which turned out to not really happen because we didn't see a cloud all day. But if I recall, I remember trying to watch the western sky all day to see if anything ever bubbled, and it never did.
Yeah, I remember we were watching the sky while we were at Monument Rocks, and we were all climbing up that tall, what we were calling it, the big piece of chalk, and getting all covered in dust. And so we couldn't see any building cumes, and then when we left and we were getting back on the highway, we ran into the Naval Academy's chase team, and they had made the same decision about hanging out for eastern Colorado, and I guess we played some football with them in the parking lot and then kind of split ways.
Yep.
Right.
Parking lot that was home to the largest prairie dog or something like that.
That's right.
There are the
and speaking of Mighty Rocks, here's the rocks with the vehicles in front and somebody standing way on top of the one there.
Of course.
Yeah.
Who climbed it first? Because once one person climbed it, everybody had to climb it.
Yeah.
I tried to, but I was wearing sandals, and that was not really a wise choice of footwear.
I think it may have been Pete. Here's one I grabbed. Oh, go ahead, Catherine.
Oh no, there's that. There were like two sections that we were hanging out around, and this was like that arch piece that was across from the big one we were climbing around on.
Yeah, and so mine is from the one we were climbing around up top with this Pete on the left there, Alec on the right, and you could just see out there was a little bit of cirrostratus, and that was pretty much it for as far as you could see.
Yep.
Yeah, and that was looking west too, right?
Sure, we'll go with that.
I mean, we had a great storm view or sky view from up there. If cumes were building, we would have seen them.
Right. I remember on the 2008 Stormchase, there was a tornado reported near Monument Rocks, and at the time I had no concept of what it looked like. But now looking back, I was like, man, that would have been an awesome view sitting there, especially if you're gutsy enough to stand on top of those while there's a tornadic supercell going by.
Well, let me tell you, Kevin Myatt and I have talked about that trip since then, or going to Monument Rocks, and both of us, I don't know, I haven't talked to Dave about it, but both of us had our hearts in our throats, hoping nobody was going to fall and break an ankle off one of those things.
Especially because getting up wasn't the issue. It was
Getting back down. Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Dan.
there were a couple of places where the footing was a little uneasy, and even with my leg span, it was a little tough to try and make some of those drops.
Yep. Well, Julianne and I, another great Hokie Stormchaser, she and I were kind of the last ones to climb up, and we were like, this is great, and then we tried to get down, and it was like, we didn't think this through, and so she froze halfway down because she was so scared, and I was like, Julianne, you got to go, or I'm going to kick you so you fall, because we have to get back to the van.
Megan had come down right before me as I was coming down, and
Yep.
the way to get up there, footpath was pretty narrow.
Yeah.
But I remember at one point, because Megan was below me, I just kind of asked her to stop me, and she's like, there's no way I'm going to catch you. And I said, no, just watch my feet. Make sure my feet are in the right place.
That is so funny.
These kind of things go to show you that storm chasing is sometimes the least of our risky ventures when we're out there.
Here's just one more picture of the rocks to kind of get an idea of how tall it was, and this is zoomed in. So there's Julianne and I up top thinking we're all cool until we had to get down. And that's when things got interesting.
And
So,
I went back and dug this up real quick, and we definitely made the right play that day. These are the storm reports from the SPC from that day. There was one tornado report up in Platte, Wyoming.
yeah.
And
Now
that
it's been a
was it.
stretch to get there.
Oh, yeah.
That would have been a big stretch.
Especially since it says it occurred between 2 and 2:20 p.m. I mean, we would have been lucky to get up there by 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Going back.
it's another example of the whole trade-off thing where you look at the forecast and you try to find you know places to go, and you're realizing that, oh, wait a minute, we can't make it from South Dakota to Kansas in one day and still chase. So it's that whole geography thing that gets in the way.
The one part of the country where there isn't a nice north-south interstate.
Right.
Yep. Might be by design too. I don't know.
Oh, and Chris, we did talk about this in the previous hangout. For people who are new to chasing, you really get a good understanding and an appreciation of how expansive the West and the Great Plains are out there. Because you look at a map and point A and point B, you might be like, oh, that's easy. It's, directly north-south of each other. We'll be fine. And then 8 hours later, you reached your destination. So you do get that appreciation for the distance that you have to go out there.
The other thing I remember, I think it was this day, that afternoon, we were coming back towards, I think it was Hays, Kansas, where we stayed that night.
Yep.
And everybody, all three of you drivers, were having trouble fighting the crosswind. I don't know if it was that day, or I think I may be thinking of a day on I-80 in Nebraska too. But
No, you're right, Dan.
Wicked southerly wind blowing all day.
Yep.
And it was, I'm sure it was hard for you, Chris. I can't imagine what Dave and Kevin were trying to keep the vans straight, pointed east, while the wind was blowing 90 degrees perpendicular to them.
Yeah, and if you think of the size of the mezzanets on top in proportion to the size of the vehicles, mine was about 1 to 1.
Yeah.
So wonder we didn't just flip over.
So those little light cars with that big kite on the top, that wasn't the most ideal driving conditions.
Right. After that trip, I strongly suggested to Dave if he was going to take 3 vehicles, we needed another van.
Another van. That's right.
So, well, one of the other things to keep in mind too, and something that came in mind with that Monument Rocks stop, one of the reasons that this trip was unproductive was because of the continuing drought out in the plains. It was very dry. And while we were at Monument Rocks, I remember a pickup truck came by with a couple of farmers from the area. We kind of chatted with them. I don't know if it was Dave and I or Kevin and I, or just chatted with them a little bit. And they were hoping that we were going to bring rain. They were saying, hey, you guys, the storm's coming. We need rain really bad, But that was one of the reasons why the storms were so scarce. And they were, we really had to deal with, except for that day when, as you were talking, Dan, with that really strong southerly wind pumping the Gulf of Mexico moisture up there for the next day when we actually did chase. it was really scarce to the first 4 or 5 days we were out there.
I think I remember it got to a point where one of the first forecast parameters we looked at each day was dew points. We kept hoping that the dew points were a little bit higher and a little bit higher for the storms.
Right.
Yeah, that was the biggest issue that trip, was just dealing with meager moisture, and you know, Dave was always talking about, you know, how much you got to rely, or it was either Dave or Kevin would always talk about looking at, you know, just your ground moisture content being a factor in storms being able to draw moisture, not only just from the atmosphere, but when your ground is moist too. That's another added component to what you can look at for, you know, where storms could develop.
Right.
Right. And given also for new chasers, looking at parameters and stuff, given normal conditions, and by that I mean not counting on upslope, say in the high plains or things like that, which we had to deal with other chases. Typically, what you're looking for is for tornadic storms is a base dew point of at least 60 degrees. That's kind of the cutoff. I mean, they can happen at other, you know, at lower levels, but you have to have something special like upslope, maybe a really strong lifting mechanism, you know, a strong front with a bunch of shear, things like that.
Right.
Palmer divide.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Slope up. That's
Things like that. Yeah. So, well, as we've talked about, we had that really strong south wind that afternoon, pumping moisture up northward for our setup for the next day, which was that Saturday setup we had looked at in kind of north central Kansas. So that day we did, that was Saturday, May 19th, and we did what we typically do, is got out of the hotel, you know, late morning, motored our way up to a little town. This particular town was Belleville, Kansas, and north of I-80, and we found a little park, just a municipal park to stop in, and we pull the vans in. Everybody gets out. We usually have some lunch, and remember footballs and frisbees flying around. I think I remember Catherine saving my life one time by catching a frisbee that was heading right at me.
Oh yeah, that was my ninja catch day. I forgot about it.
Yes, it was.
It was headed right for you and Kevin. It was gonna hit you right in the side of the head, and I was listening to you guys looking over here because we were looking at the computer, and I heard "look out" and caught it like this right before it hit you guys in the head. I don't know.
So we owe you our lives.
I'm going to risk a screen share here because I did the impossible and caught a picture of Robert Stonefield actually smiling. And there you go.
Okay, let's see it. Oh my gosh!
Oh my goodness.
I had probably just made fun of him or cracked some kind, or actually no, he'd probably just cracked a short joke about me. That's probably why he's laughing.
I think I celebrated immensely after that picture, and I realized I caught a picture of him smiling. And I think he was devastated by the loss.
And it didn't crack your lens either. So.
It did. If Robert is listening right now, I hope he is.
Well, we'll just have to make sure to send him the link to this after it's over with.
Yes, and for those of our viewers who don't know who Robert is, Robert Stonefield, he's a forecaster at the Blacksburg Weather Service office. Great guy. Great guy.
Yep.
He is. He is.
Despite what we're saying about him.
Well, if he was a rotten guy, we wouldn't talk about him at all. So. Yeah.
Exactly.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, I remember being there. I didn't time it. I do know that there were a number of cars that streamed in and through the park, looking at these three vans with funny-looking things on top. Some of whom stopped actually to talk to us. Mm-hmm. And one of those people that stopped was the deputy emergency manager for that area because of the forecast for severe storms for that afternoon. So he stopped by and we chatted with him for a while, kind of filling him in on what we knew and what we expected to see. I do know we were there at least a couple of hours, and then we started seeing some stuff pop up on radar. Mm-hmm. As I remember it, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, the storm motions that day were about 25 knots or so. Does anybody remember that?
I don't remember the exact number. I do remember that it wasn't particularly fast because we went one direction and then we did a 180 to come back a different direction, and we were able to catch up to it for the most part, even though we had gone pretty far out of the way.
Right, and that was I think remember it was about 20 to 25 knots. It wasn't particularly fast, but what became the problem was the storms were only discrete for an hour or so.
Yes.
And they started lining out very quickly.
Yep.
So when we made that, we pulled out of the park in Belleville, Kansas, and turned left to go south because we were thinking we were going to go south and then go west to catch up with this one particular cell. And I can't remember if we got caught up in traffic or what, but somehow along the line, one of the other cells that was further north became better looking at that point.
Here's one radar graph that I got from that. We're kind of down toward the bottom of the image, if you can see it.
Yeah, I think it was just a case of the cells to the north just looked more impressive, and cells to the south just weren't developing, and when they were developing, they looked like they were going linear very quickly.
Yeah, I think by that point, at least one or two of them had spawned a tornado report. One of Reed Timmer's chasers was up that way and had shared some stuff, and I think by that point we were all getting kind of anxious to get up and get on something and get off the road.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. Good. I'm glad you had that screen grab, Catherine, because I think that showed exactly what we were saying is that we just got out of position on the storms that actually did wind up looking good and producing tornadoes. So we did that 180, and we did get far enough north above I think the end of one line and stopped and watched it wasn't a particularly impressive wall cloud, but it was a wall cloud for a while.
And I have a picture of that wall cloud too. Actually, first, before we saw the wall cloud, this is when we were in the middle of doing that 180, we ran into the nice Mammatus field. That was kind of off to our left as we were following the storm. And then I can get the wall cloud here. The wall cloud I remember being pretty nicely organized for a while. We thought it was going to actually do something for us at one point.
It was pretty compact and low to the ground, if I recall.
Yeah, there you go.
The pictures I have.
It had that nice blue color, and it was backlit, so it had that pink behind it.
Right. Yeah, I think it looked better when we first saw it driving along, and by the time we found a place to pull off, within a few minutes, or actually within about 5 minutes, it kind of fizzled out.
Hey, Catherine, in that radar grab that you had, were those severe thunderstorm warnings or were those tornado warnings?
They are severe. Oh, let's see. No,
because I've switched my color palette around, and so red is a tornado warning to me, but I know the default is severe thunderstorm.
I think on ours, and Chris or Dan, you could correct us, I think we did switch ours, so the tornado warnings were red, right?
We may have. I've got a picture that has like half a screen grab in it of radar. I'm going to see if I can look at that real quick and if that has any clues.
Catherine, I think you're correct. I think we did change the defaults because if nothing else, I was griping about them because tornadoes, red always means tornado to me, and yellow always means severe thunderstorm.
Right. Yeah.
I would have griped about it too.
Dan would have.
I never understood why those defaults were set that way, but.
Yeah, purple. I know, but I think because the storm did go tornado warned. That northern one did. It had the hook echo and everything. It wasn't tornado warned for long because it wasn't discrete for very long.
Right.
I do remember that it was tornado warned.
Yeah, I
think that was probably part of the reason we turned around and went that way. Is it looked good, and then it went warned, so we all kind of got giddy. And
yeah, I remember then, after that point, after we watched the one wall cloud kind of peter out in front of us, and that storm gusted out. I remember the wind started picking up. We kind of sighed in frustration and jumped back in the vans and headed east into, I think, Beatrice, Nebraska is where we were.
Yep.
Pulled into a parking lot of a fast food joint that was surrounded by fast food joints. I fortunately decided to stay with the vans and with Dave that evening because something in the back of my mind just said, "Don't leave."
Right.
One of the parameters or one of the conditions that caused me to stay was that we were still in an area, the southeastern corner of Nebraska, that had not been perturbed yet by storm formation. So
it was still warm and humid in Beatrice where we were.
It was very juicy. Now, it was getting late. I mean, it wasn't dark yet, but it was getting there.
It was pretty close, yeah.
Yeah. So, and it was unusual because we don't normally pull off storms and eat, at normal people hours. This was probably, I don't know, 8 o'clock, 7:30, 8 o'clock, something like that. So everybody dispersed, and Dave and I are at the vans, and we're watching the radar and looking at the sky, watching the radar, looking at the sky, and he said, I think you better call everybody back.
Yep.
So we started making phone calls, and somebody sent out some texts. I think we sent a runner or two over to a couple places. And what did you guys do? Did you bring your dinner with you? I don't remember.
Yes, I remember. So I was with the Taco John's crew, which is a shocker.
Of course.
I think there were like 5 or 6 of us at Taco John's, and I remember we had just put our trays down on the table, and I think I was like putting my burrito up to eat, and I got a call from you, Chris. And so I'm like holding, and I'm like, yes, and everybody get back to the van. And so all of us kind of felt like a movie where it was just, we gathered everything, like put it in our shirts, and like ran across the parking lot.
Everybody bailing out of Aunt Meg's house.
I remember still eating my Taco John's while we were speeding down the road. But really, I mean, I'm eating a burrito, and I'm looking at this at the same time. I mean, can you even discuss the perfect moment that was? Taco John's in a shelf cloud. So.
The only way it could have been better is if you had Taco Bueno.
Yeah, I was going to say Taco Bueno with the fresh salsa bar. If I had had that with me and the shelf cloud off to my left, then we'd really be in business.
And the only thing I could say is I'm glad you and I were in a different vehicle.
Yeah.
I don't think. Well, one day, I don't know what happened. I had Taco Bell and Taco John's on the same day, like 6 hours apart. We won't go. We won't go there.
Did you buy a lottery ticket that day? That's all I want to know.
No, but we didn't have to worry about Cape. That was for sure.
No, I was going to say we were worried about the moisture. At least I could help out in some way, right? And before you all laugh at me, Kevin always ate at the Mexican places with me, as did several other people. So there were 4 of us contributing to that. Mm-hmm. And I'm just gonna.
Hence the reason you were always his navigator, not mine.
That's right. That's right. Because we had that common. I'll call it a common bond. Kevin and me.
Yeah, we'll leave it at that.
We're gonna leave it at that. I do remember apologizing to Adrian one time. Like, Adrian, I've had 4 bean burritos today. You're my roommate.
Well, that had to have been a rough night in the room.
Oh.
No, I'm
good. She'll get her say on the next segment, because the next time we do this, she's going to be on the broadcast, so she'll be able to talk about that too.
Oh boy.
Yep. Yeah, she will. Yeah, we'll have some stories, Adrian and I.
So we did get everybody there, counted noses, make sure we had all the right number of people in the right vehicles, and took off kind of to the east and north a bit. And as we rolled along, actually, I had my dashboard camera. I still use it, by the way, the little suction.
Awesome.
And my little flip video. But I had that running, so I recorded as we were going up the road the wall cloud and shelf cloud combination, because it actually was a shelf cloud that looked like it at one point had a bow echo in it, and it began wrapping up a little bit behind that. So we got almost, in fact, it was almost dark, and we pulled off the road to kind of check radar, to watch things. And I remember a deputy
around that time.
There you go. Couple good shots there. We actually had pulled off the road, and a deputy sheriff stopped by because out there, of course, they act as kind of like additional Skywarn spotters and emergency response folks. So he stopped by, and Dave kind of showed him the radar, showed him what was going on, and so he took off.
I got a picture of him.
You did?
And, yeah, right there. There we go.
Okay.
Kind of talking to us. You can see the car. And it looks like he's talking to Robert on the right-hand side.
Okay.
Oh, and that's the Sharknado cloud. Who was calling that the Sharknado cloud?
I hadn't heard that before, but that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think it's on my Facebook somewhere. Go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, as things progressed, I wound up taking this picture. And to me, this is my favorite picture from that trip. Is you see a bunch of the Hokie Stormchasers standing there watching couple of gustnadoes spin away from them as the shelf cloud overhead crosses their head. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, that's an awesome picture. That's one of my favorites, I think, of all the chases, Chris. And here's a picture of kind of the wall cloud that we saw for a while. It had that beautiful blue color to it.
Yes. Yes, that's a very good picture. I like that one as well. In fact, don't you have that on the wall behind you?
I do. It's one of the ones directly behind me on my weather wall here in my apartment. Let's see. You can kind of see it.
Yeah, right over here.
There you go. Right there. One of my favorites.
I have a weather wall, but it's not in this room. It's in my garage, so sorry.
But it's not hard to miss Andrew in this one with the Dayglow orange shirt.
No.
My bright orange Skyward background shirt.
Nice, Andrew.
Still got it. I wear it out when I'm chasing around here for Channel 6.
Awesome.
Hey, man, it's the lucky T-shirt.
Absolutely.
Wasn't that lucky on this trip?
Well,
Details. Oh, and you know what, Chris? Here's a zoomed-in shot of the gustnado. Hold up. Let me screen share it. There you go.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I got a shot similar to that.
Yeah, so it was a good one. I remember the winds whipping pretty hard around that.
Yeah, there were some pretty impressive ones that evening because as it got dark, or dark enough so that it really wasn't worth seeing anymore, we jumped into cars and headed east along that road, actually following the deputy sheriff. And I remember, in fact, I got this in my notes. He wasn't that far ahead of us, and all of a sudden, a big gustnado spun up in the field right next to him, and he hit his brakes and pulled off the road. And when we went by him, he was on the radio. I suspect he probably had to go home and change his pants because he thought a tornado was spinning up right next to him.
He probably called in a sheriff NATO.
Yeah, it could have been.
Probably what he was doing. Yeah.
But then about another mile or two down the road, I stopped laughing at him because the same thing happened to me.
Happened to you. It was off to the right.
One spun up right in the field next to me, and my heart jumped in my throat for about 2 seconds, so I realized what it was.
Yep.
So, and that was about it. I mean, we saw some pretty awesome sights that night. We saw the shelf cloud, wall cloud, a bunch of gustnadoes, and we turned it into something that was it was a worthwhile chase day. But unfortunately, that was about the only worthwhile chase day we had, if you don't count the core collapse that particular trip.
Right.
So the only day we were actually chasing severe warned weather.
Right. And then because the pattern looked so bleak, I guess you could say, for the next few days, we actually cut the trip short and wound up back in Blacksburg on Monday, the 21st. So we really were only gone from Tuesday through Monday, and that included transit time. So that trip was cut just a bit short because of the lack of activity.
Yeah, I remember that being a short one.
Yeah, that was a little.
Was 2012 the year when the best setup? Was that the year that the best setup happened between the trips?
That was 2011, I think.
That was 2011 in Oklahoma. The Oklahoma outbreak was the day we got back to Blacksburg.
Yeah, we missed. Yeah, it was the El Reno EF4 that happened. Yeah, May 24th, the day we got back.
Yep.
Yeah, and well, it happened a little bit on this trip too. In fact, Kevin and I were laughing the other day. Pretty much every trip, every year where we had two trips that bracketed the Memorial Day weekend, we missed something.
Right.
You can almost count on Memorial Day weekend, that long weekend, some good setup is going to happen, and it usually did.
And you can't do a 1,000-mile U-turn in 24 hours, unfortunately.
No.
Especially when you have people that need to get back home, and you can't just rip them back away again.
Right.
Yep.
So, I mean, that was pretty much it for this particular trip. Let me just kind of throw it out to you guys. What was your favorite part of this particular trip?
I think for me, I will always remember this trip as one that was a little bit easier on the body because we didn't do as much driving or as long of days. We had a lot of earlier nights where we were able to have group dinners. I mean, we had the Pizza Hut, and then we ate at the Whiskey Creek in Hayes, and we had a lot of like nice lunch stops because our target areas, while they busted sometimes, weren't that far away from each other. So I remember it being a little bit more relaxed in terms of getting to and from point A and point B, and even though it wasn't a great trip in terms of storms, I remember still arriving back at Virginia Tech feeling really great, and I had a great time because we had experiences like Monument Rocks. Not many people get to see that or experience that. So that's what I remember about the trip. We still had a blast. It was a great crew, and we saw some storms.
Yeah, you don't always need to have great weather out there to have a good time. And yeah, we definitely had a good crew that year. Everybody was very focused on the weather and forecasting. And I mean, I remember in particular Alec being in the back of the van. I mean, anytime we were traveling, he was sitting there poring over the models, trying to figure out where to go next. I mean, he was gung-ho on trying to set the next destination. And so, I mean, just the weather knowledge of the crew was very good, and that makes the trip just as much fun. I mean, if you don't see, I mean, even just seeing what we saw out there, you still don't see things like that around here on the East Coast. So, just being able to see that on its in itself was, makes it don't see a tornado.
Yeah, this would have been the first trip after the meteorology major had been officially put in place, and so a lot of the people who were going were actually now declared meteorology majors as opposed to just a gaggle of geographers running around.
Right.
Yeah, and absolutely, I'll echo what you both have said. This was a great trip, despite being very, very short. We got to go to Monument Rocks, and I think that was pretty exciting for me because I wasn't expecting to get to see anything other than storms and lots of farmland. So it was nice to get that break in between and see something that gives you a little more appreciation for, what everyone else kind of chalks up as a flyover state.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I just put up a picture of the crew here.
It's a good crew.
Oh, Catherine.
Great crew.
Catherine, was this the trip where we got corralled by the TV crew before we left, and you got interviewed?
Oh,
Yes, it was.
unfortunately, where I got ambushed.
You got ambushed by Orlando Salinas.
Oh my, Orlando Salinas. I'm trying to see if I have a picture. Someone took a picture of me dismantling all of my stuff in the van because he wanted to see something, or he asked to see all my thesis materials, and I happen to have my computer so I could do forecasting. He's asking to see my thesis stuff, and we're like 10 minutes from departing on this storm chase, and they're interviewing me on camera, and I obviously look like I'm about to spend, a 15-hour day in the car ride. So, yeah, that was an interesting start to the to the trip. Yep.
Yeah, I had forgotten about that until you showed that picture, because that was actually taken before we left, wasn't it?
Yes, that was taken before we left, and I remember, and I was going to say, let me put it back up, Julianne was cracking us up because she called it floating head status, and so then, like, the whole rest of the trip, we called her the floating head. Just that became her nickname, and that's another thing to bring up for new chasers. You have a lot of time to kill in the van, so
the first common picture.
Yeah, right. So people get nicknames. You have inside jokes. You leave with basically a dozen new best friends that you didn't have before you left. So that's one of my favorite parts about storm chasing is how close you get with the people.
And that trip had a range of people.
Right.
There was, I think Megan was a freshman, and we had juniors and sophomores and seniors, and me being 2-3 years out of college at that point. I mean,
Yep.
a wide range of students and instructors on the trip.
Yeah, we can't forget the obligatory Twister watching. With Amanda on the right, Bonnie on the left in the back seat. This was at our rest stop in Iowa, Indiana.
Yep.
Would have been Indiana, yeah. The first night out. And so we got that one out of the way early.
Always, yes. If you're chasing with the Hokies, you must know the first night we watch Twister in the vans. And typically, depending on who's kind of the leader, who's in charge in each van, we coordinate. We get over the CB and we say, okay, 1, 2, 3, start. So we're all on the same part of the movie. And
so we can just radio and talk back to each other and drive Dave even crazier.
Quote, we can do our favorite quotes of the movie. It's just, it's a must. If you plan a chase with the Hokies, you're going to watch Twister at least once, so you should know that right away.
Well, we'll have to work on something different this next trip because Dave's done away with the Stormchase computers, those old PCs, so we're going to be going all iPads, I think.
Oh, okay.
That's what Netflix is for.
I was going to say, we've got Netflix, we've got YouTube, we'll figure it out. It'll be fine.
And I'd like to point out that we've gone 55 minutes without saying dominate once.
That's really
impressive. We didn't make it that long last time.
No, we did not.
Yeah, somebody's slipping up here.
Dominating.
So, well, Catherine touched on. Oh, I'm sorry, Dan. Go ahead.
Nope, I didn't have anything.
Oh, okay, sorry. Catherine touched on something that she wanted to recommend for new storm chasers, based on their experiences on these trips. Anybody else have any words of wisdom for anybody who may be planning to go the next year or two?
Definitely be ready for being in a van all day and being ready for a long trip. And I think you touched on this on the last discussion, Catherine, but if you're unsure of whether you're frightened by severe weather or not, this may not be the best time to really figure that out, because we've had storm chases in the past where we've gotten in very intense situations, and some of the people have walked away from it kind of rattled, and it kind of impacted how some subsequent days went, because we had to kind of respect, not harming them again with another intense situation while still trying to chase storms. So don't think this can be your trial session for whether I'm ready for severe weather or not. You need to have that passion for severe weather right away and be ready to go out there and see it and potentially get in the tense situations.
Yes, and I will add to that, Andrew, that happened to me on one of the trips where it was night one in the hotel, and we're getting ready to go to bed, and it was a new chaser, and she turned to me and said, "So I don't know if this is the best time to tell you that I'm actually terrified of tornadoes." And I just kind of, I didn't really know what to say, because we're already 600 miles from home on our way out to chase. So in the back of my mind that whole trip, I remembered what she said, and I was worried. Are we going to have a really scared and nervous person when we're in an intense situation?
Right, and that's kind of leads to another point, I think, on the overall piece of this, is that this is obviously it's a team, and this whole idea of forging a team through 12 or 16 or 18 people, depending on how many are on the trip, one person can really affect how the success of the team,
right,
positive or negative. And so it's important to understand that your contributions as a chaser are important, but it's also important to understand that you don't need to detract from the chase either. Dan, you got anything to add to that? Any other suggestions for newbies?
Like Andrew said, you've got to have the passion for it before you go out on one of these trips, but you've also got to have a lot of patience. For as much chasing as there is, there's 2 or 3 times as much driving with not a whole lot in store, or sitting around and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting.
I say there are chasers out there that spent years waiting to see a tornado, and some of our trips have been very fortunate to see a tornado on a trip. Seeing a tornado is an exception, not the norm. So I mean, we do our best while we're out there to get to the most intense storms, but it's certainly not a guarantee that you're going to see a tornado while you're out there. So if you set that as your benchmark of what you're going to go out there and see, you should go ahead and prepare yourself now to be disappointed, because it's just not a guarantee.
That's a very good point, and I make this a lot of times when I talk to people about storm chasing or when I give storm chasing presentations, that I'm a storm chaser, not a tornado chaser.
Tornado chaser.
And so there's a lot of features about storms that fascinate me that have absolutely nothing to do about tornadoes. Tornadoes are kind of like the icing on the cake.
Right.
Yeah. We didn't
I
get to see a
apologize
whole
about
lot
that as
of
well.
nice, big stacked supercells this time around, but you know, the pictures I've seen from some of the other trips where you got to see those big mothership supercells out in the middle of nowhere where you've got this fantastic view of this immense structure, you know, going 40, 50,000 feet in the air, dwarfs even the biggest tornado, I think, in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
Right,
Yeah.
and that's one of my differences, I guess you could say, with some of the professional storm chasers, that you see these videos that they're up close, and all you see in the video is this rotating column of what looks like dirt. That's the tornado, because that's what they want to get. But that has absolutely no interest for me. I want to see the entire storm. You know,
Right.
yes, I want to see the tornado if there's one, but I want to see the updraft. I want to see the base. I want to see where the precipitation shaft is. I want to see the whole thing, not this big rotating wall of mess right in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
You want to see the whole anatomy of the storm. You know, by giving it distance, you're giving yourself some safety and some breathing room, but also some, you know, a view to see if it's a mothership, to see the pancake stacks, to see, you can see the updraft and the downdraft, the hail core, a hail foot, you know, before we've seen hail feet and heard the hail roar. I know one time in 2011 we were looking at a large tornado, but we were standing under the sunshine. You know, it wasn't even raining over us.
That was this one right here.
Can't see it, Andrew.
Oh, the tornado over my shoulder. We were that one started off. That was 2010, but not 2011. But that was when we were on a hillside and it was bright and sunny out. And 5 miles away, there's this wedge tornado drilling across the open countryside of South Dakota.
Right.
Okay. Well, we've been going about an hour now. Anybody have any last recommendations or thoughts about this particular trip? I do have one announcement I'll finish up with, but
I mean, just, you know, another good crew out there, and as I said in the last one, you know, for the years that I was on it, the crews just got better every year, and that was direct relation to the meteorology program starting up there. So, I mean, I haven't been on the last couple of years to know how the crews are, but I've only heard good things about them ever since. So, you know, Tech's got a good thing going down there with the meteorology program, and there's great people to lead you on there. You, Chris, with your experience here in Virginia storm chasing, and Dave and Kevin, you know, the writer, the weather guy for the Roanoke Times. I mean, wealth of knowledge that goes out on those trips. So it's a good learning experience for new students down there.
well,
Yeah, we've been very, very lucky to have a lot of great people with a lot of knowledge who've been very invested in seeing the program succeed. You know, Chris, you and Kevin both, and people like Robert and Steve Caton and some other folks with the Weather Service in Blacksburg who've been invaluable to getting the program going and offering their knowledge and their experience to augment what we're getting in the classroom and in the labs and in the field.
right. Well, you know, I have to admit that I learn a lot from you guys. Just I like to see other people learn and how they process, take in data and the experiences. So to me, that's a learning process as well.
It's amazing we haven't had more issues on these trips with people debating which way to go on a certain day. You know, I think only once or twice that I can think of in 5 years has there's ever been a split decision on which way to go. Almost every time the decision is unanimous, which I think speaks a lot to how everybody gets along on these trips and how everybody thinks.
I think one of my favorite parts about these trips is, you know, when we're heading out, people like Andrew and Dan, Chris and I, were training the rookies and kind of showing them the ropes. Here's what we look at in the morning. Here's kind of our process of forecasting. And then, you know, we do one chase day, and they've all got it. You know, they've all got it down.
Yep.
And they know what they're doing, they know what they're looking at, and it's just awesome to see that whole transformation of, they're going out as greenhorns, and then we come back and they have all this knowledge and experience. So that's always fun for me to see. It's very rewarding.
Yeah, it's an amazing process to watch happen. So, well, speaking of future episodes, I actually have the next one lined up. We're going to be talking on December 5th. That's another Friday night at 8 p.m. about the second 2012 trip, and which, fortunately or unfortunately for you guys, but fortunately for the crew, was actually much more productive for storms. The guests I have lined up now all are experienced chasers, meaning that they've been more than once on the Hokie Stormchase. Of course, we have Catherine returning. She's going to be talking on that one as well. Jamie Morrow, who is now a grad student here at Tech. He'll be with us. Amanda Weigel, who was with us on the 2011 trip and on the broadcast last time. And then Adrian Engel is going to be with us.
All right.
Who is out at Lincoln, Nebraska right now at University of Nebraska.
As a graduate student.
Yes, as a graduate student. So
That's
we will be.
lineup.
Yeah, I think it will. I'm excited about it, and of course I was excited about this one too. It's good to see you guys again as well. All right. Any last comments, last words before we close it up?
Dominate.
Dominic.
There you go.
Yeah, dominate. All right, guys. Hey, thanks a lot for your time, guys. I really appreciate it. And it is good seeing you again.
Good to see you guys.
As well.
All right. Have a good one. Bye.
You too. Bye, guys. Good night.
Good night.